to be able to fit into the society in terms of inputs to jumpstart them. More often than not, they learn these skills or trades and they just lie fallow like that. So in recognition of this, we decided to look at it from the angle that, look, why don't we create a platform where we begin to capture them at a time of training. At a time of training, this will encourage them to become serious and they will see a future where they could access resources. That was one leg of it. The second leg of it, we found out that quite a number of school leavers don't even have much to do. So it became obvious that we need to get them to learn skills if they cannot move on to the next level. So that prompted us to setting up a vocational training institute in Ajashe. Of course, it's an international vocational training institute because it's benchmarked against best practices, best features in industry, largely based also on demand assessment to create a curriculum that fits into contemporary areas of development. And these are things that we've already clearly spelled out how they're going to work and how they're going to access funds when the students move out of that institution. We're also working such that sponsorships can also fit into that program, i.e. we have sectors in the oil and gas, we have sectors in marine, we have sectors in civil engineering, mechanical engineering, that want to train people for certain skills that are doable there. We begin to see clustered sponsored groups coming in to take advantage of what we'll have there.
These are very interesting programs, but one of the things that people complain about, or we've heard over time, is we have very good programs, but the people who really need them, who are those who are residents in the rural area, sometimes they cannot key into it because they don't know about it, or some just have the perspective that it's a man, no man thing when it comes to government programs. So how are you carrying these people along concerning these programs?
Yeah, with any of these programs that we start with, quite a chunk part of our time and resources are committed to advocacy, because we get to reach our people to let them know that they require to have a buy-in into any of these programs we're coming up with. It's been on the strength of that the next levels are developed that takes us to the desired level when we'll be on auto cruise level. But you see, we'll try to ensure mostly that everything we do is carried on across the 16 local governments. We have structures on ground that's fitting into each of the 16 local governments. We have youth empowerment coordinators whose responsibilities are to collate data on unemployed youths between the ages of 16 and 35 in each of the local governments. And for every levels of openings that come in, we draw people from this list to fit into the areas of vacancies we want to do. So it's not something that's restrictive to the municipalities. It cuts across the 16 local governments. So if you go to each of the 16 local government headquarters today, you will see that there's an office of the Youth Empowerment Coordinator that maintains the data. There's an office for the liaison officer that keeps a liaison between state government, local government. And also we have a special assistant intergovernmental that maintains the close relationship between the state and the local government. And we have one that maintains between the local government and between the state and the federal government. These are all levels of bridges that have been created to enable people at the grassroots level to access information on practices that are being carried on at the state level. So it never allows anybody to be out of tune with what we are doing.
States have been advised to take advantage of their comparative strength, if I could put it that way. In Kwara, we know it's agriculture, and you have products like rice. And there's been a lot of talk of recent times about the importation of rice when we really have the ability to produce what we have. So what is the government in the state doing to help the federal government reduce the importation of rice into the country?
Yeah, you see, we've always been very interested in driving agriculture because, one, knowing the fact that we stand at a very vantage position because of River Niger, and of course the soil, supports agriculture very well. We've since recognized this, and this has been the major fulcrum for driving the state economy. We attempted to create commercial farming, which I would say is a huge success in Nigerian context, because we ventured into commercial farming by bringing in sugar farmers. And today, the three consortiums have been formed, largely poultry, dairy, and mixed cropping, are getting gradually to their desired levels. And I'm sure the most important part of it, which is the skills we have learned in those areas, is currently being transferred to our local farmers. We have started with a model, because when you're starting something new, you need to start small, because you'll be able to manage the risks at that level. On the strength of that, we've set up a platform that has taken 10 farmers into cooperative groups within each of the 16 local governments. So about 160 farmers. These farmers have now been broken down to support 4 major crops we're starting with: rice, maize, soya, and cassava. They will now be given inputs from what we call an agric mall scheme we have formed. The agric mall scheme is a one-stop shop where we have input providers, i.e. fertilizer, chemicals, seedlings, extension services, and funding, and also equipments for land clearing, equipment for farming, will be made available in one-stop shop. So owners of each of these inputs will now have their reps clustered in an environment that will make the farmer access information and services just within one spot shop.
Another initiative of the federal government is the cassava bread, and we know that Kwara State also has a comparative advantage in producing cassava. What do you think about this initiative, and how is Kwara State keying into the initiative generally?
The initiative is very good. Between you and me, it's a good initiative, and I think it's going in the right direction. The only loose end we have, not getting it to the drive and the right impetus that is expected, is, the level of compliance, which requires a little bit of pressure on the policy implementation, because the level of compliance is not as compelling as it should. So the level of commitment to, our input users to source cassava is not as strong as it should be. Because it becomes very strong, obviously you will see that backward integration driving itself automatically. And unless we get to that level, because there requires to be some good level of balancing. You can't stop importation when you don't have the capacity to support the gap that's going to be created. So to that extent, there has to be a dual working process, so that whatever it's been lost here, it's being gained here. If you can work on a lose and gain process, then you'll be able to drive it efficiently. Otherwise, you create a gap, and that gap could be counterproductive. So I think it's in trying to get that to the desired level, where whatever has been lost is being gained from one side. Then that would take us to the desired level when you begin to see the system gradually reducing imports and increasing local production.
Talking to a lot of entrepreneurs in Nigeria, they say the environment is unfriendly, especially when it has to do with multiple taxation. In Kwara State, Kwara State is obviously part of Nigeria. Is there anything the government is doing to make the environment more friendly for them to operate?
Yes, we've had issues of multiple taxations and being made mention of by people, businessmen, especially when we had a forum where we created, an interface between the private sector and the government. There are issues of public taxation, issues that were raised. But by the time I asked the chairman of Board of Internal Revenue to review those issues, they are not actually multiple taxation. Because, you see, when agencies go to collect taxes, a lot more often than not, some people don't know the difference between the federal, the state, and the local governments. And the areas of interface are clearly spelled out. There are no issues where local government collect taxes and state collect the same taxes. Because areas where they are even supposed to collect taxes do not overlap. But more often than not, there are areas of joint tax collection that may come up. For now, we don't have any yet, except 1 or 2 pockets of local governments, where states and local governments would agree to jointly collect taxes and agree on a sharing formula. Where those kind of cases happen, I think those are possible areas where sometimes taxpayers feel they are paying double. But so far, we're still looking at all areas of complaints where we had there are multiple taxations, and we are reviewing them. I want to assure you that all areas that has to do with multiple taxation in the state will be completely eliminated, because we want to ensure that we make the environment as enabling as possible for current and prospective investors.
Some have this idea of harmonizing taxes, so that the local government, the state government, the federal government can come together and just tell the taxpayer how much he needs to pay for a year. I think that way it will make it less of a burden to them. I mean, what do you think about this?
It's not impossible. I think it's not impossible. These are options that are available to the three tiers of government if they so desire to harmonize tax collection and revenue sharing processes. But I don't know how feasible it is going to be possible for them to do it. But don't forget that because of the laws that is guiding each of these collection and sharing formula, quite a few things require to be tempered with, probably in terms of the law that is enabling, before this sharing platform can come in. But I still think it is not impossible. They are doable. To a very large extent, you see, everything has its own advantages. For instance, the idea of even having it in different forms might have its own flavor, where it gives you the opportunity of understanding what and who is collecting what and what you are paying for what. Sometimes they lump together. Some people might complain that we don't even know what we are paying for, that everything's just been put together here. You now go back to break it again to where you are coming from. So I think everything has its own flavor. It's a function of how you try to give it the right interpretation. But substance of our form, it comes to the taxpayer as a cost, and is concerned about whether it's a cost that is bearable or unbearable. To that extent, I think we are reviewing it to the extent that we don't want to put too much pressure on people, especially where we expect people to come and invest and create jobs for our people.
Entrepreneurship development, a phenomenon which international economic organizations and nations, Nigeria included, have unanimously agreed has the ticket to economic independence and development. That's why the Bank of Industry believes that every brilliant idea holds the potential of a profitable business. But when money is hard to get, the Bank of Industry comes to the rescue. So watch BOI Weekly every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. as we take you through a world where every idea becomes a successful business. We'll give you more stories next week. If you miss any information or episode of BOI Weekly, please log on to www.youtube.com/channelsweb/BOI Weekly, and you can relive the experience anytime, anywhere. Also, if you have questions or comments, we have several platforms through which you can reach us, and this will be worth your time. Until next time on BOI Weekly, I'm Ini Thompson.